Hi, folks. Welcome to She Says with Serena. I'm going to be your host, Serena. Um, this channel is going to be talking to you about everything under the sun, all the things that you want to talk about in life, but you don't feel comfortable talking about in life. We're going to handle the hard topics here. We're going to talk about the weird stuff, the mental illness topics, abuse, fear, feelings, religion. None of this channel, nothing that you hear on this channel is intended to be medical advice or anything. Obviously, if you're having some kind of a health crisis, we need you to dial 911. This is really just about one woman gabbing about things that affect my life and have affected my children's lives and my friends' lives. And you'll meet some of them in the weeks to come, and you'll get an opportunity to talk to a few of them. We're going to talk about some of the things that I have found work for me. For those of you who do know me, this is kind of my coming out day for my new diagnosis that I got last year. Some of you who know me will remember that last year I went through a little bit of something, and I was diagnosed with schizoaffective disorder. So if you don't know what that means, that basically means that I have bipolar, which I've had since I was 26 years old. And now I have schizophrenia too, but I experience the episodes, the schizophrenic episodes and the bipolar episodes together at once at the same time. So that's been interesting. And it's actually, of all of my disorders, it's my favorite one to have. It's been fun. It's been different. So for those who don't know me, I'm going to tell you a lot about myself. I was born in Podunktown, Virginia. I have a sister and a brother. Both of my parents have passed away. I'm 45 years old. For the first, few years of life, I don't really have much recollection. I do have one memory with my sister and brother, which is a nice memory to have. For the longest time, I thought that my first memory was being locked in the bathroom with a man who was babysitting us down the street. He was actually a teenager. He wasn't a full-grown man. And he did things to me. And he did things to somebody else in the house. And it was a one-time incident that my parents handled the best way that they felt they could. About a year later, I had a cousin who was a teenager at the time. He started to molest me and another family member at the same time. Made us do things to each other. Let me see. By the time that went on until I was 11 years old, till I was 11. And about a year after that, throughout all that time, my parents would get together, they'd split up, they'd get together, they'd split up. The summer after I told my cousin if he ever touched me again, I'd tell my dad. Actually, the winter after that, me and my mom and my sister left my dad and brother and moved to a different town in Virginia. And we were basically trying to escape my dad because he had an alcohol problem and keeping his hands to himself problem when he drank too much alcohol. He was an unpredictable alcoholic. So you just never knew the Ronnie that you were going to get, which made him dangerous at times. And so my mom took my sister and I, and we moved to a different town where we stayed hidden for several months until I wrote my daddy a letter. Mind you, I was only 11, so I didn't realize that I was tipping him off to where we were. And he ended up coming to where we were with my brother. And that didn't turn out very well. My mom then moved to Alaska. She took my sister and brother and moved to Alaska. And there's a lot of detail that I'm going to leave out here. Like in all of what I'm telling you, I'm not going to give you too much detail today, right now. Um, it'll take time. It'll take stories and moments of us talking and getting to know each other before we're there as a community. I will share the details of certain things with you as it unfolds naturally to me. Right now, I just want to give you a lowdown of kind of what my experiences in life have been, so that you understand when I'm talking about the things that I'm talking about. I'm speaking of these things from a place of experience. These are things that I've lived myself, that I've gone through myself, that I've learned about on my own. I'm not an educated person. I dropped out of high school in 10th grade. Um, I don't have a college education. I certainly am no counselor or therapist or psychiatrist for that matter. Um, I just know what I know because I know what I've been through, and what my experiences are going to be different than your experiences. So what works for me may not work for you, but what does work for me might work for you. And if it does, God bless us both, because why not do what works for each of us individually, right? So that leads us to my teen years. I was so screwed up, like my brain had gotten readjusted or something through all that trauma in my childhood. And it wasn't just the molestations, it was like in between the molestations, it was the fights with my parents, my dad, like putting his hands on my mom and throwing her outside and doing things to her. And my mom being inappropriate in and of herself and doing things in front of us that, you know, at 45, I realized she shouldn't have done that in front of her kids. You know, at 35, when my kids were that age, I can't say that I didn't do some of the stuff in front of them myself. So it is what it is. We learn as we go. Um, let's see. So in my teen years, my brain was very twisted. I really confused feelings, like positive feelings for somebody, for sexual feelings. It got, excuse me, I'm air burping from y'all. Oh, goodness, I got no manners. It really got twisted in my brain a little bit of, you know, where enjoying being around somebody stops being about just being in the space with them and starts being about a sexual experience, because it had all gotten twisted in my brain. And so I was a very inappropriate teenager, um, a bit promiscuous, not as promiscuous as some would believe, but a bit more promiscuous. I knew in the eighth grade that I was bisexual. That became very clear to me very quick. It was not something that I questioned. It was not something that I mulled over. It was just something that I was. And I was okay with that. I didn't think it was a big deal. I never felt the need to like announce it to the world, because I just was who I was. Like, I don't know. Back then, I don't recall people like, I'm sure people did come out back then, but we didn't have the freaking internet back then. So if people came out, it's not like we threw a party or something. You know, your neighbor was just suddenly gay. Okay. Let's see. My father shot himself when I was 17. Shot himself in the head. He went upstairs. My aunt, his best friend, was having surgery. She had an aneurysm on her brain, And my father, I had just gotten back from Alaska from a 4 month visit. It wasn't really a visit, it was, well, it didn't work out in Alaska for me. Um, so I came back home to my daddy. And 3 weeks later, my aunt was in the hospital, like I said, and my dad just went upstairs and he wasn't even drunk. He wasn't even drunk that night. I mean, he had opened a beer, but he wasn't drunk. And he just went up there and sat on the side of his bed and pulled the trigger. And we all heard like the gun drop. It was a small caliber gun, so it's not that it made a lot of noise or anything. It But the sound of it dropping to the floor out of his hand, we heard that clearly. And my sister was at the door in a hot minute, and she was like, "Sarah, you got to go upstairs and check on Daddy." And I was like, I don't want to do it, but thank God my effer, my eternal friend forever, was there with us that night, and she was actually the first one up the stairs, and then I followed behind her, and we stayed up there with my dad until the medics got there, and yeah, that was Sunday, I believe, and Wednesday, Wednesday. They kept him on life support until Wednesday because we donated his organs. That was in November. We had a memorial for him. My mom came, which was weird. Which is weird. They had been split up for several years. But then I later learned why she came and I understood. But at the time, it was weird. And yeah, so that was fun. No, it's not at all. That really, it's weird because thinking back now, uh, that was such a turning point in my life. I know that the trauma from being molested caused the post traumatic stress disorder that I was diagnosed with at 19. But the trauma from my father committing suicide, like, totally rocked my world. And if that's ever something that you're thinking about doing and you have children, don't do it because it's not something that's easy to process when you're a 17-year-old kid. Uh, it's not something easy to process when you're a 21-year-old daughter. That was very, very hard for my sister. Uh, it was hard for my brother as well. Um, so yeah, about, let's see, Daddy died in November. I want to say by March, April, I was pregnant. Uh, and that also completely rocked my world, completely changed my life in all of the ways that you would expect motherhood to. And it was a struggle, it was a struggle. I was 18 years old. The father of my son didn't want anything to do with me and my bastard child, as he put it. So, which was fine. I mean, it wasn't fine then. I'm gonna tell you what, it wasn't freaking fine then. But, dude, it's fine. I ended up getting with a friend. He was my friend. And he basically said, come chill with me for a few weeks and if you still want to, go away someplace else, because that's what I was going to do. I was just going to go back to the place where my mom had taken me and my sister to start over, and I was going to start over by myself. And so he said, stay here with me and my family for a couple of weeks, and if you still want to go, I'll drive you. And I said, okay, free food for 2 weeks, and then I get a ride. All right, sounds great. And we just got along so well. We enjoyed each other's company. It wasn't even a like intimate kind of relationship. He was my friend. Like, he genuinely gave a crap, and he couldn't have children of his own. And at 18, I felt I needed a daddy for my baby. I did not want to. It's not that I felt like I couldn't do it on my own. It's that I wanted to have a daddy for my baby. It's just that easy, you know. There was no trapping of him or anything like that. We were very upfront with each other. We got married, and my son was born. Our son. He was named after him and his father, and he was great. Like, he was he he looked like he was 80 years old sitting there in that chair. But he was great. I ended up getting endometriosis and having to be taken back to the hospital within like 24 to 48 hours after we'd gotten him. And I ended up having to be in the hospital for like 10 days or something ridiculous. And my mother-in-law at the time took very good care of my son. And she bonded with him. Those first few weeks of life are so important. And I ain't mad now, but back then, I'm not going to say that I wasn't very upset about the fact that she was getting to bond with my son and I was not. And not that it mattered, because by the time I got home, he wouldn't breastfeed or anything because we had been separated for so long. But there was a bond between me and my son that was just unimaginable and unbreakable and unwaverable. Um, when he was about a month before his third birthday, on December 19th, 1997, his mama and papa took him to the store to go shopping. His papa had picked him up. My son complained that he had hurt him. His name is Christopher Truman. Excuse me, bad habits are hard to break. Do what makes you happy. So Christopher was diagnosed with stage 4 neuroblastoma, which is a form of childhood cancer. There's a lot of family nonsense going on. My paternal grandmother told people I was lying about my son having cancer. Yeah, so that was fun. I through my ex-husband, my first husband, and his family, there was definitely support. There was definitely support for my son. And I'm not going to say that they weren't supportive of me at times, because they were. But there was a lot of animosity by that point. And not that that was all their fault, because a lot of it was my freaking fault. I have a big mouth that I have always struggled to control. And I react on my feelings instead of my emotions. And more often, I react on my feelings and my emotions instead of my thoughts. So usually, like, something will happen and I'll be like, and then an hour later, after I've had time to process it and sit back and mull it over and think about it, then I'm usually sitting there going, wow, could I have been a bigger asshole? I mean, it's probably possible, because I'm a pretty big asshole at times. Not so much anymore, but definitely back then. But I had a lot going on that I didn't know either. Um, so at that point in my life, I had been diagnosed with a severe generalized anxiety disorder and post traumatic stress syndrome related to the molestation and the suicide. But I was very, very, very out of control at times. Like I would go from completely fine, completely okay, to I'm going to eat your freaking head and digest it and poop it on top of your mom's head. Like seriously, that's how insane I was. Not like it would just come out of nowhere. Uh, so I didn't receive a whole lot of support from my family on my dad's side when my son was sick. And by a whole lot, I mean any. My mom was she did everything she could from where she was in Alaska. Um, both of my aunts, my mom's sisters, were amazing, amazing. Even my kooky grandmother, she tried. And my uncle, who I am estranged from currently, uh, he'd pop in and out. I mean, it's my at the same time that my son was sick, one of my aunts was very sick too. So people would pop in and out. Um, my son did go into remission, and me and my first husband did split up. Uh, he came out of remission a very, very short time after that, and they had found a tumor that was sitting on top of his heart that could not be operated on. There was nothing more that they could do. He had been in treatment for a year and a half and received multiple surgeries and chemotherapy and radiation and bone marrow transplant, and there was just nothing else to be done. And Christopher was a very old soul. Uh, his daddy and I, we like it's not like we kept it from him what was going on. Like from the day he was diagnosed, we told him in very child terms that, hey, little buddy, this is what's going on with you. They're going to put this thing in your chest. That's going to be your tools. That we're going to use those to work on you, so we can try and beat those bad cells in your body. And he understood, as well as a 4.5-year-old can. He was 4.5 by the time he passed away. Well, I mean, he passed away October 26, 1999, and his birthday's January 18th. So he was almost 5. Um, he was an absolute joy to parent. He he was a blessing. He is still a blessing. Uh, he's still my son. He's still very much part of my life every day. Not, and I'm going to talk about that for a second, though. I'm going to talk about that for a second because I recently mentioned to somebody how unrealistic that is. We as parents who lose our children, you know, it's okay to not think about your deceased loved one, your deceased child. It is completely okay to not think about your deceased child every single day for the rest of your life. If you have a day, if you have 10 days, and you're just living, and things are just happening, and then on that 10th day, you think to yourself, shit, I haven't thought about Christopher in like almost 2 weeks. Dude, that's okay. There ain't nothing wrong with that. Not only do I believe that people who have passed don't want us to do such things, um, we're going to see them soon enough. It's okay. Don't beat yourself up over not grieving every single day of your life for the rest of your life. It's okay to let go of that grief sometimes, even if it's your child. I stayed so wrapped up in that grief. I felt like that grief was the only connection I had left to my son. I felt like the minute I let go of that wall of guilt, that knowing I can't live with it, I feel like as parents, as mommies especially, and not that this doesn't happen with daddies, I'm sure that it does, but I know that it happens with mommies because I talk to them. We so often allow ourselves to be defined by being a wife or being a mom that if something happens and those things stop, if my husband dies, if my children die, like there's still me. There's still a whole person here, and I matter too, and that's okay. Um, you can't completely define yourself with the love that you have for others. You have to have love of self as well. It took me a long time to figure that out, learn how to do it, and implement it in my life. And I do everything with me is through the grace of God. And I don't have a problem with anything that anybody else believes. I'm I consider myself a Buddhist Christian. Um, I don't go to church. I'm not interested in going to church. I appreciate people who go to church. No, I don't want to come to your church with you. Um, thank you. If you'd like to come to my church with me, it's right here in my home. And that's about all I'm going to say about that right now. But we'll touch on that a little bit more later. I don't want to get too off topic because my brain will cease to function properly. I'm on a timeline. And right now, my son just died. And I grieved tremendously for years. For 5 years to be exact, I was drunk. Not that my grief stopped when my sobriety started, not that my sobriety totally started, but it, like, for 5 years, I was no good. During that 5 years' time, I got married again. I got divorced from my first husband, and I married my second husband, who was somebody who I had known who he was, but we didn't know each other. And I guess I should have taken the time to get to know him because I don't think that I really did that. But we got pregnant, and we had a beautiful baby girl. Like, she came out just as pink and pretty. I was like, the hell? She coming to me? Okay. All right, good. But yeah, uh, he and I were together. We were only married for 6 months. We were together for several years, but in that time of he and I being together before we had our daughter, we weren't together all that much. He was working. He had he was in a band, so at least 3 days a week, after work, he would go to his band thing, which was cool. And like on the evenings that he was home, I was at work because like we had to work, we got to work, right? So we really didn't spend all that much time getting to know each other. When we were together, we were drinking, we were smoking weed, we were relaxed. It wasn't time to talk about um, our thoughts on world topics. It was time to order Chinese and veg out. Like, that's what we did. And the only time we weren't doing that was when I was psychotic and out of my mind with grief and making him walk 10 steps behind me down the street or drive me 2.5 hours away to my son's grave so that I could lay there and cry until I passed out. It was a very tumultuous relationship. There was not much healthiness going on there at all. Not, like, it just wasn't. We were young, and it was what it was. I don't regret it at all. Like, he was my friend, and I was in love with him for a short period of time. At least I thought I was. I loved him. That's for certain. And I was in love with who I thought he was. But over the years, I mean, we've raised a child together for 20 years. So over the years, I've gotten to know him a little bit more as a person. And I've often thought, like, you guys are total opposites. What in the hell were either one of you thinking? But it's cool because we got our kid. So, you know, win some, you lose some. It is what it is. A lot of talking. Made me parched. Okay. Where are we at? I do apologize. I know that this first show is going to be very long, but this show is about you getting to know who I am so that you can decide whether you want to come back and see what she says. Because y'all might just be like, this bitch crazy. I got no time for this shit. Okay, so my son died. My daughter was born. And then at the age of 26 years old, when my frontal lobe was finished, I got involved with a much older man who did the best he could with me. You know, it was during that time that I was finally diagnosed with bipolar disorder. Now, bipolar disorder is a hoot and a half. So much fun. Like, seriously, your ups are up here and your downs are down here, but your downs can get much lower and your ups can get much higher. Look at all that love. And you don't know if your ups are going to be, or if your ups are going to be. And most of the time, my ups were all about, you know, I didn't even know why. Like, I get pissed off. Not that I didn't, just so we're clear about this, not that I didn't have plenty of reason to be mad at different points in my life for different things, okay? But not always. A lot of times I flipped out for the stupidest shit and didn't just flip out a little bit, like flipped out to the point where I'm cocking a gun and shooting in the general direction of somebody to get their attention because I was angry. Um, very, very unreasonable thinking pattern. Very unreasonable. It was also around that time that I went to jail. Um, I I was charged with, at one point, I was charged with false statement to an officer. I got very drunk one night. I was on a date with a man, and we had been dating each other for a few weeks, and I wanted him to say something to me that he clearly wasn't ready to say, and it ensued to this crazy, crazy fight that made no sense. And he ended up hitting me on the head with a 2x4 or something, some kind of a block of wood. It gashed my head open a little bit. And his parents got me home. And I don't know, my grandmother took me to the hospital. There was blood. Not that it was major or anything like that. It was not. And when I was there, cops came in and they were questioning me, and I just spewed out of my mouth because my grandmother was in the room, and I didn't want my grandmother to know what a promiscuous little person I was. I said that he raped me, and clearly he did not. I slept on that, went home and slept on that, and I woke up the next morning. And funny enough, I was ready to go to the police station the next morning and just be like, dude, I told y'all some shit last night that's just not so. But by the time I got there, the detective sat me down and said, basically, I think you told us some shit last night that just was not quite so. And I was like, I did. I really did. And he was like, yeah, we're going to have to charge you with that. And dude, I was like, okay. point. That's just who I am, and that's how I've always been. Like, when I do shit and I do something wrong, once I realize it's wrong, because I don't always realize, but once I do realize it's wrong, or if somebody else points out to me it's wrong and I pray on it and I start to feel some kind of way, like, I'm gonna own my shit and I'm gonna take whatever it is, like, tell me what I gotta do, because clearly I was wrong in doing what I did. So whatever the consequences of that are, I'm generally a let's just face it and get it over with kind of person. So I also got a DUI around that time. Went to my preliminary drunk. My grandmother took me, and that's annoying about smoking. You can't talk when you smoke. I like to talk, so. I feel like there should be a sign behind me that's saying like dead air, dead air. Um, so around that time I had the bipolar disorder diagnosis. The court, the court. We went to court that morning, and I was still drunk from the night before, and the judge said, Mrs. Back then I had a different name. Uh, he was telling me the maximum sentence. The maximum sentence is 1 year and up to like $2,000 fine. And I was like, are you fucking kidding me? And he said, we don't speak that way in my courtroom, Mrs. McGregor, or Mrs. Cameron. I'm sorry, Mrs. Cameron. And I was like, I pay taxes for the people, by the people. And he pointed out the window and he said, do you know what that building is? And I said, no. And he said, that's our jail. You can stay there until your court date. You pay for that building as well. Like, slammed his gavel down, and I was like, what, huh? What just happened here? Oh, yeah. They gathered me right up and took my ass and made me sit in that jail for 43 days until my court date came back around. But I'm going to tell you what, I thank that judge. I thank him with my whole heart, because it took me going to jail and sitting there in that hot, sweaty, stinky jail with women who had stabbed people to realize here I am filling my life, my organs, my brain with all this alcohol to cope with the fact that my son had died, and yet I had a perfectly healthy daughter sitting at home who wanted me and needed me. And what in the hell was I doing? I didn't know what I was doing. I was so screwed up. I never knew what in the hell I was doing. Suicide, that was just like, attempting suicide was just something that happened in my life. I would get to the point where I would feel like I don't wanna feel anymore. I don't wanna feel. So I'd take a bunch of pills, or I'd slit my wrist, or I'd do whatever stupid thing I thought was going to stop me from feeling. Feeling. That's what it's always been about for me, is all these feelings. Oh, feelings are like, who wants to feel them? I have to readjust you. I'm not comfortable. Oh, look, I didn't even show you any booby. I did good. Okay. So the next couple of years were just, they just were what they were. I did what I did and tried to learn as much as I could about bipolar disorder, which wasn't much, because I, at that point, I still did not yet have access to the internet the way other people did. I had my little, that I forget what kind of phone, Nokia. I had my little Nokia phone, press 3 times for the S or whatever it was. So by the time I was 29 years old, I met my now husband, who, if you don't know me and you don't know him, he is just the most amazing person in the entire world to me. Um, I want to talk him up, but I don't want to talk him up too much because I don't want anybody messing with him. He's just amazing. He's incredible. He completes me. He helps me. He guides me. Um, my dad, back then when I was between 25 and 28 years old, 26 and 28 really, my dad, my mom, my stepdad, and my mom were really on me all the time about, you need to turn to the Bible, you need to study the Bible, you need to turn to God. And God's always been a part of my life, but not like that. Uh, and so I would study the Bible, and my husband and I, when we first got together, like, in case y'all forget, at the beginning of this conversation, I told y'all I was bisexual. Yeah. So, like, just because you're with a man doesn't mean you stop being attracted to women. Uh, and so, in the beginning of our relationship, there were other people involved in our relationship, and there was some. We did some things to each other. He did some things to me. I did some things to him. He did some things to me. Uh, I threw out all my medication. We went through what we refer to as the summer of hell, where my bipolar depression was the worst it's ever been in my entire life. Um, and I'm not sure if that came from me dumping all that medicine. I'm not sure what it came from. Looking back now, I think that made, like, I wasn't, at that point, nobody told me that I had this explosive bipolar disorder. They just told me that I had bipolar disorder. And so all of these explosive things that would happen, and this being out of my mind and whacked, and, like, I could I could do something really bad and then reason with it in my brain to make it seem like I'm not the one who's being bad. It's the other person that's being bad. Uh, I was abusive to a child that I loved very, very much. I still do. Uh, but that was very, 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 very hard to face the fact that I did that. Um, it was when we do bad things, we have to own it, even when it's hard. You just have to, because you damage other people without meaning to, and it helps to heal the damage that you've done if you can own what you've done. And it's not that that's an easy thing to do. It's not. Um, it's it's the right thing to do. That's what it is. So I've been with my husband since 2006, so for the past 15 years, and life has been extremely interesting and very fun and very knowledgeable. Uh, we have two children who we have raised together with their other parents. We co-parent with two other couples because we have his daughter, we have my daughter, so we have his daughter's parents, and then we have my daughter's other parents, and yeah, uh, um, his daughter, who's my, I really don't, for the sake of this channel, I'll refer to her as my stepdaughter, but that's just not how, she's not my stepdaughter, she's just my kid. Uh, she, she's great. She has to deal with a little bit of anxiety and depression from time to time, but overall, she's good. She's steady and stable in her life, and she gets good grades, and she's got a job, and she's well on her way to exploring colleges and all sorts of things. And our other daughter, my daughter, She has always struggled with developmental disorders and mental illnesses, but just like her sister, she's great. She's doing so good. She's 19. She's got a job that she goes to, and she really puts her best foot forward and tries to excel at. And she's learning so much about herself, and she's in her own mental illnesses, and it's good. It's good. So, what I wanted to talk to you guys about before I wrap this up, because we've been on it for about 45 minutes now, and the next time I come on here, you know, I'm not too sure what this channel is going to turn into yet. There may be some fun short little videos throughout the week, and then maybe an hour-long live video on the weekends. That hopefully, in the next several weeks or whatever, we can get some interaction with it. You guys can talk to me, ask me questions. I'll definitely have some friends on here to answer some questions. Um, if for those of you who know me, don't be freaked out because I have schizoaffective disorder. Look, here's the thing, people. I was terrified, 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 terrified my entire life. The one thing that I've always been terrified of is being diagnosed with schizophrenia. That's what my brother has. Um, I've watched him for 20 plus years. Well, almost 30 years. It's closer to 30 now than it is 20. Live his life outside in the woods. Um, I haven't seen him since 2013. I don't know where he is exactly. I don't know how he is. But I know that he's doing the best he can with what he has been offered in life. And the great United States does not make it very easy for people like us with mental illness to receive the help that we need. I'll tell you that right now. Not in any state that I've lived in so far, which would include Virginia, Maryland, and Florida. They all pretty well suck at helping out people with mental illness when it comes to getting the help that we need from psychiatrists, from therapists. Um, I'll tell you that I think that anybody who has mental health condition or illness whatsoever needs to seek psychiatry. You need to see a psychiatrist, and talk therapy helps. It does help. Right now, this is my talk therapy. I don't have a therapist. I don't have insurance. I can afford a therapist, and helping you, it will help me. And sharing with myself, like that's what we do when we go to the freaking counselor anyway. We sit there and we talk about our life. And no offense to any of you counselors, but half the time all they do is sit there. They don't offer anything back. Like you if they're not giving me resources or coping skills or offering me some insight and I'm just talking, well, I can sit here and talk to y'all for an hour and no one's going to charge me anything. So it's all good. It's all good. I told my daughter that I wanted to talk to you guys today about your mindset. Okay. So, what does that mean? Your mindset. Your mindset is like it's the attitude that you choose to have. And I say choose because life is a choice. Every day of your life is a choice. Um, I know that you have to feel your feelings when you have to feel your feelings. But once your feelings are all wrapped up in a nice little bundle and you've calmed yourself a little bit, then you choose how you react to those feelings. How you're choosing to react to those feelings is all about your mindset. My mindset, because of what I went through last year when I became psychotic, when I was diagnosed with schizoaffective disorder, when I started hearing voices, uh, my mindset was in a very loving place, a place of God, because that's what I was doing at the time. Thanks to all my Black friends, I was learning more about Black people. I was learning more about Black history and more about all of it, like slavery and all the massacres. And that led me to going, but the Bible's part of history. So let me go back a little bit further. Let me see if I can find some answers to these questions that I have in my Bible. And I started going, wait a minute, wait a minute. None of this stuff is what they taught me in the church. Not that I was a big churchgoer growing up, but I did go to church and I was taught things just like we're all taught things. And as I've been reading my Bible myself, uh, I realized that a lot of stuff I was taught, it's not what the Bible says. It's not what the Bible says at all. And we'll talk more about that stuff as time goes. We will. Your mindset is so important, especially if you have mental illness. Okay, keeping a positive mindset, keeping a mindset. So for me, the way it works for me, um, and I know I'm going to get it wrong. It's in Matthew. In Matthew, it says that God's greatest commandment is to love your God with your whole heart, your whole soul, your whole being, all the time. So I'm always trying to do that. If I notice myself becoming a negative Nancy or pissed off Paul, in my brain, I say to myself, Jesus, what up? Like, dude, I need you. Help me out here. And I pray. I do the Our Father. Look, honestly, guys, in my brain, I say the Our Father who art in heaven prayer. And sometimes I do it once, sometimes I do it twice, sometimes I do it 3 times. And it usually helps me to change my mindset to one of, look, if I'm feeling these negative feelings, then I can't be loving my God. I need to be focused on loving my God. So I changed my mindset around. I'm not saying that that's going to work for you. I'm not saying that that's what you should do. I'm not saying that you need to believe in my God. I'm not. Um, but what I am saying is that a positive mindset can be a life changer. I want you guys to know that I did my work. I did my work when it comes to bipolar disorder, explosive bipolar disorder, when it comes to schizophrenia, when it comes to schizoaffective disorder, when it comes to post-traumatic stress disorder or anxiety, when it comes to the things that my daughter is affected with. I've done my research. I've read. What I suggest to others to do, and it's something that me and my daughter talk about. She has a self-regulation problem, so that's a developmental disorder, and basically, feelings for her just fall out of the sky. So she's just walking along happy as a button and doing her own thing, and then all of a sudden she's feeling shit, and she doesn't know what shit feeling she's even having. Because if you're just automatically feeling something, first you have to define that feeling. So she's got to figure out, am I angry? Am I irritable? Am I constipated? Like, what the hell's going on with me? Why am I feeling this way? What am I feeling? So once she can recognize what she's feeling, then she can reflect and she can say to herself, why am I feeling this way? Is what I'm feeling a reasonable amount for the situation? Because the situation may cause her some frustration, but it may cause her that much frustration, whereas she's feeling that much frustration. And so for her, it's read, reflect, recognize, and regulate. Because then she knows, okay, bring myself back in. Let's try and regulate these feelings. Can we do it every single time? No. And I'll tell you what's funny is I don't have self-regulation, but since she and I worked on that little thing of read, reflect, recognize, regulate, I use it in my own life and it helps me. It does, because like I said before, I'm somebody who reacts on emotion before I react on my thoughts. So if you slow down a minute and read, whether it's, you need to get on the internet and read about the mental illness, or you need to go find your happy place and meditate and read about whatever. Just calm yourself, recognize what the issues are with you, reflect on them, see if you see it in yourself. A lot of times we're diagnosed with stuff and they get it wrong. They get it way wrong. Not that they always get it wrong, but sometimes they get it way wrong. Um, the other thing that I just wanted to, and I kind of mentioned it earlier when I talked about some of the things that I'm guilty of in my life. You have to fix your shit. If you do something in life, I don't care if you're psychotic. I don't care. I I was psychotic for most of last year. Okay, that doesn't make anything that I did during that time that was bad okay. If you're going through a period of psychosis and you steal, you uh, you harm somebody, you harm whoever. If you lie about people, if you do things to people, whether you were psychotic or not, you have to own what you've done. And you know, look, I can't do something against somebody and not feel bad about it. And even though my mental illness certainly explains why I do certain things and why I behave certain ways and why why these things sometimes happen. It doesn't excuse bad behavior. It just does not. Because no, we're not always in control of ourselves. But once we recognize that we've had behavior, it's up to us to own it. And if you just excuse it away with mental illness all the time, you won't grow as a person. You won't grow as a human. You need to evolve. We all have to evolve. And in order to evolve, you have to learn. And in order to learn, you have to open your mind. I hope today you opened your mind a little bit. I've really enjoyed sharing a little bit about myself with you. This was a little nervous at the beginning, very nervy at the beginning. I think it turned out okay. And look, folks, we'll see what happens for next week. Let me just look over my notes here to make sure I got everything. I think that's about it. Okay, so look for my videos. If you enjoyed this, like, subscribe, wherever the buttons are. I don't know. Other people do that stuff. I don't know. Share it with your friends, and I'll be back next week. Bye.